Hello again everyone, welcome back to the channel. Now today we're going to look beyond the Roman frontier of Britain and look westward across the Irish Sea to an island that the Romans never conquered. No legionary fortresses were built there, no Roman governors ruled its lands, no network of Roman roads stretching across the countryside. And yet, despite remaining outside of the empire, it was never truly beyond the Roman world. Roman writers knew about it, Roman goods were found there, and at least one Roman governor seriously considered conquering the island. I am of course talking about the island of Ireland, or as the Romans would have called it, Hibernia. To understand the relationship between Rome and Hibernia, we should first look at what the Romans themselves knew about the island. One of our earliest references comes from Julius Caesar, writing in the 1st century BC during his campaigns in Gaul. In his commentaries on the Gallic Wars, Caesar briefly mentions that the island lies west of Britain. His knowledge was limited, but he recognised that another large island existed beyond the lands that he had explored. Ireland was not unknown, merely distant. By the 1st century AD, Roman geographical knowledge had improved considerably. The geographer Ptolemy, writing in the 2nd century AD, produced a remarkably detailed map of Ireland. He recorded coastal settlements, tribal territories and rivers across the island. This level of detail strongly suggests that Roman merchants and sailors were already travelling around Ireland's coasts. Traders, after all, are often the greatest collectors of geographical knowledge in the ancient world, and trade seems to have been the most important link between Hibernia and the Roman Empire. In 43 AD, Emperor Claudius invaded Britain, bringing the island firmly into the Roman world. And with Roman control established, new commercial routes developed between the Mediterranean, Roman Britain and the Atlantic coasts, with those trade networks soon extending across the Irish Sea. Archaeology has revealed a steady trickle of Roman goods arriving in Ireland during the first centuries of the empire. Roman coins, jewellery, glassware and pottery have all been discovered at sites across Ireland. And many of these finds are concentrated in central and southern Ireland at places such as Tara and Cashel, suggesting that Roman imports were reaching the courts of powerful Irish rulers. Roman coins have been found at the Great Prehistoric Monument of Newgrange, showing how far these objects could travel. These were not everyday goods, they were prestige items, objects that carried status and symbolism. For Irish elites, Roman jewellery, fine tableware and other imported goods may have represented power and connection to the wider world. Trade across the Irish Sea may have included something darker. Some historians have suggested that during the height of Roman Britain's agricultural economy, slaves were exported from Ireland into the Roman world. Roman villas required large numbers of labourers, and slave markets across the empire drew people from beyond its frontiers. And if this interpretation is correct, then Ireland may have been supplying slaves to Roman Britain. But trade was not the only connection between these two worlds. Cultural influences also flowed across the Irish Sea. Roman fashions, for example, appear to have influenced elite dress among Irish communities during the later centuries of Roman Britain. Imported goods and contact with Romanised Britons introduced new styles, materials and symbols of status. One of the most intriguing possible influences concerns writing itself. Ireland developed its first native writing system during the late Roman period, the Ogham alphabet. Most surviving Ogham inscriptions date from the 4th and 5th centuries and are carved into stone monuments. Some scholars believe Ogham may have been inspired by contact with Roman literacy, perhaps through Irish communities living in Roman Britain. The system itself is very different from Latin writing, but the idea of recording language in written form may have spread through cultural exchanges. Interestingly, some Ogham stones found in Western Britain contain bilingual inscriptions combining Old Irish with Latin-influenced Brittonic languages. These monuments reveal just how closely interconnected the Irish Sea world had become by the final centuries of Roman rule. But alongside trade and culture, there may also have been military contact. And the most famous reference comes from Tacitus, writing about the governorship of his father-in-law, Gnaeus Julius Agricola. During Agricola's campaigns in Britain in the 1st century AD, Tacitus tells us that the Roman governor seriously considered conquering Ireland, believing that the island could be held with a relatively small force, perhaps 1 legion and accompanying auxiliary troops. Tacitus also records that Agricola received an exiled Irish ruler, hoping perhaps to use him as a pretext for intervention. Later Irish traditions describe a figure named Táthúil Techmar, a legendary king who's supposed to have been driven from Ireland before returning with an army to reclaim his throne. Some historians have wondered whether these traditions might preserve a distant memory of Roman involvement in Irish politics. The evidence, however, remains uncertain. Tacitus never actually says that Agricola invaded Ireland. He only tells us that the possibility was considered. Yet another Roman writer hints at something more. The satirical poet Juvenal, writing in the 2nd century, boasts that Roman arms had been carried beyond the shores of Ireland. Whether this refers to an actual expedition, a minor raid, or simply poetic exaggeration is impossible to say. But archaeology has uncovered intriguing evidence that keeps the question open. On the eastern coast of Ireland lies the site of Drumana, a large fortified site overlooking the Irish Sea. Roman coins, brooches and other artefacts have been discovered in significant numbers in that area. And nearby, on Lambay Island, Roman material has also been found in burials. Some historians have suggested that these finds might represent the remains of a Roman military trading post, perhaps even a temporary base connected with Agricola's ambitions. Others argue that these were simply Irish settlements engaged in trade with Roman Britain. For now, the evidence cannot conclusively prove a Roman military presence. But it does show that the eastern coast of Ireland was closely connected to the Roman world. By the later centuries of the empire, those connections were becoming more turbulent. Roman sources describe Irish raiders coming from across the sea to attack the western coast of Britain. These raiders were known as the Scotti, and by the 4th century, Irish warbands were regularly raiding Roman territory. Their attacks formed part of a wider crisis that struck Britain during the Great Conspiracy, when multiple groups assaulted the province at once. In this sense, the relationship between Ireland and Roman Britain had begun to change. Trade and exchange were increasingly joined by raiding and warfare. And yet the cultural connections between the two islands continued to grow. By the early 5th century, Christianity had already begun to spread into Ireland. In 431 AD, Pope Celestine I sent a bishop named Palladius to minister to Christians already living in Ireland. This remarkable event tells us something very important. There were Christian communities in Ireland even before the famous mission of St. Patrick. Patrick himself, a Romano-Briton who had once been enslaved in Ireland, would later play a central role in spreading Christianity across the island during the 5th century. Some traditions even claim that Christianity may have reached Ireland much earlier. Later sources suggest that Aristobulus of Britannia, sometimes identified with the Aristobulus mentioned by Paul the Apostle in the New Testament, may have preached in Britain and possibly Ireland as early as the 1st century AD, although this tradition is almost certainly untrue. With the rise of Irish monastic culture, Latin learning, inherited from the Roman world, became deeply embedded in Irish intellectual life. In the centuries after the fall of the Western Roman Empire, Irish monasteries preserved and copied Latin texts, producing a distinctive literary tradition known as Hiberno-Latin. In a strange twist of history, the island that Rome never conquered would become one of the great centres of Latin learning in early medieval Europe. So why, in the end, did Rome never conquer Ireland? Well, the answer probably lies in simple practicality. Ireland lacked the mineral wealth that had drawn Rome to Britain. Its political landscape was fragmented among numerous small kingdoms, and Roman armies were already committed to defending and expanding their existing frontiers. For Roman emperors then, the costs of conquest may simply have outweighed the benefits. And so Hibernia remained beyond the empire. No Roman province was ever created there. But the island was never truly isolated. For centuries, merchants, raiders, missionaries and travellers crossed the Irish Sea. Goods moved between the islands, ideas followed close behind. Rome never ruled Ireland, but its influence still reached its shores. But thank you very much for watching. Please remember to like, comment and subscribe, it helps immensely, and I'll see you on the next one. Ciao for now.